Hello and welcome to Wired In. I'm Diana Galata with Hampton City Schools. I'm very pleased today to be joined by Miss Phyllis Henry. Welcome.
Thank you.
Miss Henry is a member of our school board in her 4th term. So before we ask you a few questions about school board, let's talk to you a little bit about your background, because you have a very interesting background in education. But first off, where did you grow up and where did you go to school?
Well, my father was an Army Reserve officer as well as a university professor, so I lived a lot of places growing up, but mostly in Alexandria, Virginia, which is where I began teaching at George Washington High School 50 years ago. And taught there for 2 years, and then I came to Hampton in 1968 to teach at Pembroke High School, which was a very exciting time. It was the first year of total integration in Hampton, and Pembroke was former Phoenix High School. It was a wonderful school and wonderful student body. I ended up teaching at 4 different high schools in Hampton and 3 junior highs. I taught U.S. history, world history, and French for the most part, but intermittently German and international relations. And then in 1986, I went to Phoebus as an administrator and grew roots. I was there 18 years and retired in 2004 as principal of Phoebus.
So once you retired, you decided to come back and run for the school board. So why did you decide to run for school board?
Well, right in the middle of getting ready for SOL testing, a group of friends had been trying to convince different candidates to run for the school board, and none of them would take us up on it. So finally I decided maybe I had enough name recognition that I would run. I decided to run 2 weeks before filing deadline, and it was a lot of fun. I had no idea what I was doing. I felt like that in 4 elections, but a lot of people were very kind and supported me, and so I've been on since 2004 in June.
So tell us what your favorite thing is about being on the school board.
Well, it's nice to still be involved in something that was such a large chunk of my life, but I most of all enjoy being a cheerleader for Hampton City Schools and for telling people all the good things that we're doing. I've enjoyed being part of selecting 2 wonderful superintendents, and I like to be there to support them in what they're trying to do.
So what do you think, across the country, public schools are faced with challenges, so we're not unique in facing challenges, but what do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing Hampton City Schools, and what are we doing to respond to those challenges?
Well, I think you might think that the biggest challenge is the state regulations, which they keep changing, and we've managed to step up and get our children ready for the higher state requirements as they appear. But I think the biggest challenge is really getting children ready for a world that changes so quickly. And I think we're doing a lot with that to build the academy approach to help children make, their young people by then in high school, make their decisions about what they want to do with their future. Because they're much more bought into their educational program if it seems real and relevant to them.
So as we face our challenges, how do you feel your background in education is serving you as a member of the school board?
Well, there's nothing new under the sun, and there are a lot of things that they talked about 50 years ago when I began in education that are still relevant as new approaches. But so I think I have a lot of sympathy for people who are trying to accomplish building programs and building things, as we did a lot of that at Phoebus when we built the Center for High Tech and when we built high schools that work and a lot of programs that help children find career choices.
So you mentioned Phoebus, and you were there obviously a long time, and you're a great cheerleader for Phoebus. You always have been. What are some great strengths for Phoebus High School?
The most amazing, well, a wonderful caring faculty that's been there since it opened. I was part of the original faculty in 1975, just briefly, at Phoebus, and the faculty was always very caring and very loyal, as our staff in general is in Hampton City Schools. But I think that the neatest thing about Phoebus is that the kids accept each other for who they are. I've never seen another group of young people that they are friends across grade levels, they're friends across neighborhoods. A kid with dreads will be friends with a kid who's very preppy and another one who's a goth, and they don't judge each other for who they are. It's very unique and very special about the place.
So speaking of strengths of Phoebus High School, what do you think are some of the greatest strengths of Hampton City Schools?
The staff is one of the great strengths. There's a great loyalty and affection for this community on behalf of the staff. The staff really wants their students to do well. They expect them to do well. They work extra hard to get them to do well. We have some strong leadership. And the thing I told our new superintendent when he was coming is that we have an amazingly supportive community. Just like a family, we may criticize. I said ugly things about my brother and sister growing up from time to time. But anybody in this community, if we ask for help or we ask for support, they're always there. My teachers at Phoebus never asked for something from the community that they didn't get an affirmative response. And that's going to be a wonderful strength and opportunity as we move forward with the academies, because that whole approach is to involve our students in the community and our community in the schools.
So as a former high school principal, you mentioned the academies. As a former high school principal, how do you see the academies becoming a real strength and resource for our students moving forward?
Well, as I said, if you can convince a young person of their goal, then they're willing to put up with things. My child, I always use her as an example, and she hates it. But she was not a strong math student, did not enjoy math, but she wanted to study. She knew that for what she wanted to study at Virginia Tech, she needed that, and she got all the way through calculus. So the motivation was, I have to do this to check off what I need for my future. And I think that's helpful for children. They don't want to necessarily sit there and learn times tables, but if they see some point in it and some connection to the real world. Also, I think the academies are going to help us create programs that are truly meaningful and that involve the technology, not just as here's our nice new toy, we all have a device, but that we use this to make connections, and I think it's going to be wonderful.
What do you think is the most difficult part about being on the school board?
The most difficult part is to go into a school and say, why don't you do it this way? Because I actually, as much as I love Phoebus, I've probably visited it less since I've been on the board than any other school, because I don't think it would be fair for me to go in there. And so as a school board member, we're looking from a distance, and it's not our job to tell teachers or administrators what they're supposed to do. So that was the hardest part at first. It's been long enough now that I'm more comfortable with that.
And you've really become Phoebus's biggest cheerleader. You really have. So you've been on the board, you're in your fourth term on the board. So looking back as a board member, what do you think is something really significant and wonderful that you have done as a member of the board for Hampton City Schools? If you were to retire from the board today and someone asked you, okay, what was the greatest accomplishment of one of the school boards that you were on, what do you think that would be?
Well, when I came on the board, the community was very concerned about the fact that all of our schools were in kind of a sad state of repair. And so in addition to building two beautiful, beautiful schools, we've also, with the help of the City Council and funding, done a whole lot to restore and renovate and beautify and make our schools inside and out what we want them to be for our community and for our children. So that's one. It's been, I'm very proud of being on a team that has hired two wonderful superintendents, because leadership and vision is very important to the division. I think it's important for me to support those folks. I also think that I'm very proud of the fact that we have continued to meet the challenge of ever higher expectations from the state. It sounds like an excuse when you say, oh, but they've changed the rules again. But they have. They change the rules all the time. When I was principal at Phoebus, we got fully accredited, but all the standards and all the tests have changed. And what we found that if it takes you 2 or 3 years to get the right information from the state, enough to be analytical and make the progress you need to make to break down the tasks you have to get the kids ready. And the requirements are much harder. A few years ago, Hampton was one of the few divisions that enforced something called the literacy passport, which was a big deal. We were going to have 8th graders not go to high school unless they could function as 6th graders. And we were one of the few divisions that actually did that. The state superintendent who started it backed out. And then there was something called what was the other one? There was a test for high school students that involved basically like 4th grade math before you could graduate. Well, now we have to have students take and pass, even if they're special needs students, algebra and geometry tests. We used to not even require algebra and geometry for graduation from high school. There are a lot of parents out there that didn't have to take geometry to graduate from high school. And that's not a bad thing. We want our children to be more equipped, and we want everybody to be equipped to be competitive in our society. But the requirements and the expectations have gone up, and we've met those expectations for our students, and I'm very proud of that.
So as we look forward into the future, what are you most excited about?
I am excited about the academies. I was kind of a holdout for joining the program because I think we had the makings of it right here in our own division. But Ford has kind of broken the code on how to involve the community, and that's going to be the exciting part of this program, is the support we're getting from all of our business and community leaders. We've already gotten proposals for new academies, including the law and public safety, and so I think it's very exciting. And I think we have to be sure that students don't feel like they're being tagged in a very narrow path, but that we're supporting them in whatever their larger vision of their future is.
Mm-hmm. So before we close, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers?
It's just been fun. I've always enjoyed it. And all those different schools that I worked in, I loved all of them. And it's fun to visit now, and it's fun to be part of the board. And I think we're fortunate that we have a community that is supportive of our public schools.
Well, thank you for coming on today and sharing a little bit about your background.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Wired In. Have a great week.